everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Care, where we shine a light on the real experiences, challenges, and resilience of caregivers. I'm your host, Annika Dhariwal, co-founder of Land to Care. Today, we're talking about something that almost every caregiver experiences, but few prepare for: the sudden shift in our support systems. When caregiving takes center stage, we often find ourselves feeling isolated, disconnected from friends, and distanced from the supports we lean on. Joining me today is Theresa Wilbanks, founder of Sustainable Caregiving and Wandering Digital Media. Theresa is a caregiver advocate, author, speaker, and podcast host whose passion is helping family caregivers create a more meaningful and less stressful experience. She's also the author of Navigating the Caregiver River, where she blends humor and hard-earned wisdom to help caregivers steer through the emotional rapids of their journey. Theresa, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Beyond Care.
Oh, thank you, Annika. Thank you for having me.
I'd now like to start kind of with the practical side of this, which is when caregiving leads to feelings of isolation and distance from familiar support. What is the very first step a caregiver can take to begin building a new support system around themselves?
Yeah, when caregiving leads to feelings of isolation, which it does, and that distance from our familiar supports, the first step caregivers can take is to begin building a new support system by pausing and thinking about reconnecting with ourselves, reflecting on our guiding principles and our core values. This our internal foundation becomes the compass that will guide every next step forward. As you know, in the whirlwind of caregiving, we often lose sight of who we are outside of the role of caregiver. We focus so intensely on our care recipient and we focus on their needs and on our family members that we lose the connection to our identity, to our own needs, to our sources of strength. And that disconnection is what intensifies those feelings of isolation. So rather than trying to force old systems to fit our new reality, which I have done, the first and most important grounding action we can take is to ask ourselves, like, what values or inner truths give us strength? Because this will form the foundation of our caregiver support system, which is very personal. And from there, we can identify our cornerstone value, which is our why. It could be love, it could be hope. Why are we caring for our family member? It could be for their dignity, for our dignity, just family is important, or maybe faith. Whatever it is, we name it. And then we reclaim a sense of purpose that helps carry us through the hard days. Now, this is when the real work begins. Then we can begin layering in the external components. And these are the routines and the strategies. Eventually, the people who align with the support that we actually need now,
Mhm.
which, not the support that we used to have or that we wish we had. We begin building a system that's resilient and sustainable. And then we discover that the most reliable and empowering support begins within us.
Wow, I really like that. I think that also applies to just so many other areas of life. It's always about like finding internal strength first before you kind of look outwards, because until you like have your own foundation, no matter like how much external support there is, like it's not possible to be kind of stable.
It's true. And as you know, when we start caregiving, a lot of times friends and family may distance from us, and
Hmm.
they may have been our familiar support system. And it may have been that we had, activities that we were involved with, and we can no longer participate in those. So we had systems in place, but all of a sudden they aren't available to us. So it is important, like you say, to kind of look within and start rebuilding something that'll work with us in this new environment, this new situation.
And many caregivers usually struggle to accept help or look for help kind of when it's being offered. How can a caregiver start saying yes to help in a way that feels comfortable and doesn't trigger guilt?
Ah, yes. And I'm happy that you said guilt because we can talk about that. It's such an important question because many caregivers do struggle with accepting help, even when it is freely offered. And I think part of that struggle, it lies in what accepting help feels like. And it can feel like you're letting go of control. It's you're admitting that you can't do it all. Um, and you're taking the risk that something may not be done right or done the way that you want it to be done. Even if help is necessary, saying yes can trigger guilt. And It's something that we often label as guilt, but when we take a closer look, it may not be guilt. Guilt is the feeling that you've done something wrong. And most caregivers haven't done anything wrong. And what they're feeling is often shame. And it's a quiet but heavy belief that needing help means there's something wrong with us. I can remember shame whispers, you should be able to handle this on your own, or a good daughter wouldn't need help. And sometimes that shame gets tangled up in what I call the other G word, which is grief. So,
Hmm.
like, we're grieving the life that we had before caregiving, maybe the simpler choices and the freedom, and even the relationships that may have changed and not look like what they used to. And accepting help is sort of an acknowledgement that life has changed, and that acceptance can be really painful. And we can resist getting help because it requires acknowledging this new reality. So we want to say yes in a way that feels more comfortable and less
Hmm.
triggering. Um, it starts with a mindset shift, and accepting help is not weakness. It's wisdom, it's strategy. I had to learn that it's actually leadership. It's saying yes is how we stay afloat instead of going under. And the goal is to lighten the load. And it's just, you might start by identifying some simple things like maybe grocery pickup or yard work, maybe meal drop off, or even having somebody just call and check on you, just an emotional check in. And when someone is offering help, if you have a list ready and you can say, actually, yes, here's something that you can do that would really help, that's awesome. And I will say that, accepting help, you might be resistant, but your care recipient might also be resistant. And
Hmm.
something that you can do is say, well, you may not need help, but I do. Just say it gently and with compassion. And that shift, presenting that the helper is someone who's coming in to help you rather than help your care recipient, it can help ease everyone into that new dynamic until it's more comfortable. And then finally, I just want to say that
Hmm.
allowing others to support you is also giving them a gift, because people often want to help and they just don't know how. And allowing them to do that is a gift to you, it's to your care recipient, also to the person who's giving you the help.
Wow, that's so insightful. And I agree. I think accepting help is the first step, and then kind of that's also accepting help from someone else is like its own journey within itself.
It is. It really is. And within yourself. I mean, it
Right.
just when you learn how to do that and understand that you can't do it all not without consequences. And it's not because you're not good enough, you're not enough. It's, this is just a very challenging situation. And if we aren't approaching it as the leader of our care team and managing the situation, and we're trying to do everything, then it just leads to burnout and quickly.
And so accepting help is like the first step, but also something that's important is protecting one's time and energy. So how can caregivers set healthy boundaries that safeguard their well-being without damaging important relationships?
Yes, it's a slippery slope into the flames of burnout. And I
Mhm.
always say that boundaries can help slow and stop the slide, because learning how to protect our time and our energy is what allows us to sustain caregiving. And it's what allows us to maintain relationships that matter most to us, because those can be tested when we're caregiving, whether it's with friends or family members or our care recipient. But the boundaries are really about setting boundaries with ourselves. Those are the most important boundaries. And it may sound simple to set boundaries, but it can be one of the hardest things that we do as caregivers, especially when the emotions and the relationship dynamics are involved. Um, Caregiving role often begins gradually. We're helping out with errands and tasks, and all of a sudden, if we don't have clear boundaries in place, those responsibilities grow until we're giving so much of ourselves that our own well-being starts to disappear from the entire
Right.
equation. Yeah. And I know I found myself in a very reactive state. I was constantly responding and giving, and I
Mhm.
was on the edge of burnout until I was in the middle of it. And it happens before you know it. And that's where boundaries came in. So setting healthy boundaries means getting clear on what we need emotionally and physically and mentally, communicating those needs with compassion and clarity. Extremely important to be very clear. We might say something like, I need to protect my mornings for rest, or I'm available to talk about care decisions once a week, but not on the fly. And you can see how I'm framing that with what I need. And
Right.
I'm not defending them, and I'm not giving reasons why. This isn't open for discussion. You're sharing what you need. We don't have to justify or over explain or apologize. Just how we can best show up for others without losing ourselves in the process. It also helps to reframe boundaries, like not as something that we do to others, but something we
Mhm.
do for ourselves. And really, by extension, it's for the relationships and all the people that we love. I've seen boundaries preserve relationships because they prevent the buildup of resentment. And when we're constantly overwhelmed and exhausted, we can lash out or shut down. And it's usually with the people we care about most. And boundaries help us stay out of that cycle.
Right.
I will say it's not easy.
Yeah.
With family, it can feel risky. We've built up these relationships with family over time. We have unspoken agreements that we probably haven't even thought about, and we're trying to change those. But for me, one of the most powerful lessons I learned was that when I started to feel anger or resentment, that was a signal that I needed to set a boundary, or a boundary had been crossed. And so it was something I needed to reinforce. And so instead of just brushing the feeling aside, I really tried to lean in and understand it and pay attention. I journaled, I practiced the conversations ahead of
Mhm.
time. And I reminded myself that I needed to do this to make caregiving sustainable, and that boundaries are self-care at the end of the day.
Right. And kind of building upon what you just said, for my final question, like in terms of burnout and emotions, like emotions can really build up just
Hmm.
within our minds and create a sense of heaviness or disconnection. So, how can practices such as venting or forgiving help caregivers release that emotional weight, reconnect with themselves, and move forward with greater resilience?
Yes, emotions do build up, and you can feel them building up kind of like in a pressure cooker. And
Mm,
if we don't release the pressure, then it does intensify until something gives. And it's usually our patients or our health or our relationships. And it's never, something planned. It's an explosion of sorts. And you think about how much we're holding in, just the weight of the worrying about our family member, the pain of watching our family member go through, what they're going through, the frustration, often resentment of being unsupported, and guilt of feeling anything other than gratitude. At least that's what resonated with me. And if we don't have a way to release the emotions, then we
mhm.
become disconnected from ourselves. And I used to feel physically tense across my shoulders. I wasn't thinking clearly, and I was completely drained, emotionally. So venting when done intentionally is and safely is a form of emotional self-care. So we are processing what's swirling inside of us before it erupts in an unplanned way that we often regret. And we might vent with a trusted friend or a support group, professional. Even our journal gives us an opportunity to vent. Anything that helps us feel seen and heard and validated can be extremely helpful. It helps us step out of fight or flight mode. But I will say venting has a downside. I mean, if we find that we're feeling worse after we've shared, or that we are constantly in that cycle of talking about the same thing, we might not have the right venti, or might need to find a different way to vent. But if somebody gets it, they are your person, and they can be the person that you share with. And writing helps you process. So you're actually, when you're writing, you're processing your emotions. You're hopefully also able to plan, and it leads to growth and healing. Forgiveness is different. So forgiveness is also a release, but it's when you're holding on to something, maybe like resentment. Resentment is when we continue to feel the same thing over and over again, this painful moment. Maybe we have been slighted by often professionals. Even professionals don't understand what we're going through, and they might say something in an insensitive way. Our family member might, that we're caring for, might say something that hurts our feelings. We might need to forgive ourselves,
Right.
so we can just simply start thinking about, where we're holding this resentment. Journal, ask the question, who can I forgive? How can I forgive myself, to start to process these things? And, when we realize that holding on to these slights, it really is, we're not freeing up our mind and our headspace for other things that are more important and more compassionate, and it's really hurting ourselves more than it's hurting someone else. So just that awareness gives us a chance to shift from self-criticism and from criticizing others to understanding, and stop defining ourselves by the moments that we wish we could do over, and that where we wish other folks did something different, because we really can't change other
Right.
people's behaviors. Yeah.
No, I really appreciate that. I think I really like the idea of emotional self-care and
Hmm.
that word. And the whole concept around it is that because each human being is different, everyone will have their own way of kind of delivering that emotional self-care to themselves, but it's just important to kind of find the method that works for you.
That's right. Yeah, that's what it's all about. This is the caregiving system that we're building for ourselves. It's
Right.
all trial and error. It's just what you said, what works for you. And if it doesn't, I wouldn't say discard it, just set it aside
Hmm.
because it might work, 3 months down the road or, a year down the road. So just finding what works and building, it's like a puzzle, putting those pieces together and then relying on them and the new folks in your life.
Teresa, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and heart with us today. Your insights, I think, really will give caregivers not only a roadmap, but also the courage to build a new kind of support system that works for where they are now in their caregiving journey. To our listeners, if this conversation sparked a new idea or a smile, please share it with another caregiver who might be feeling alone today. And don't forget to follow Beyond Care for more conversations that honor and empower the caregiver experience. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and thank you for listening to Beyond Care.